She was just a hotel cleaner, a girl no one ever noticed. But one night, a billionaire sitting in his luxury suite pointed at her and said, "Bring me that girl." From that moment, her life changed forever. What began as a simple call turned into nights filled with suspense, forbidden romance, and a love that shouldn't have happened. But sometimes the most unexpected love teaches us the greatest lesson, that true love doesn't care about money, status, or power. Susan Carter, the 33-year-old billionaire, was a man people whispered about but never dared to approach. He was sharp, powerful, and distant, like a mountain of ice no one could climb. That evening, he sat in the hotel's grand lounge, a crystal glass of golden drink in his hand, his expression carved from stone. The lounge was filled with wealthy guests, their laughter echoing softly, but Susan's presence silenced the air around him. No one ever dared to disturb him. To many, he was untouchable. But fate has its own way of crossing paths. Hannah Miller, a 27-year-old hotel cleaner, entered the room quietly. Her simple uniform and tired hands carried no sign of luxury. She was used to being invisible, her steps soft, her presence ignored. She moved across the polished marble floor with her cleaning cart, her eyes lowered, her heart focused only on finishing her duties before the night ended. Yet something shifted in that moment. As Hannah bent to pick up a napkin left behind, Susan's gaze accidentally fell upon her. At first, he thought nothing of it. Just another maid. But when she lifted her head, their eyes locked for the very first time. His cold blue eyes met her gentle brown ones. And the billionaire who never noticed anyone suddenly froze. It was strange. She wasn't dressed in silk, she wore no diamonds, yet something about her face pulled him in. Her innocence was disarming. Her beauty wasn't loud, it was soft, pure, and unspoken. She had no idea how captivating she looked in her simplicity. Susan leaned back slowly, his drink still in hand, but his heartbeat betrayed him. It grew faster, heavier, like a rhythm he hadn't felt in years. Hannah, startled, quickly lowered her gaze again, pretending not to notice. She thought, "Why is he staring at me? I'm just a cleaner. Men like him don't even see women like me." But he did. He saw her more clearly than anyone else in the room. Minutes passed. The lounge felt different now, as though a quiet storm had started brewing. The billionaire's attention was locked on the one girl who least expected it. Then it happened. With a slight motion of his hand, Susan signaled to the hotel manager standing nearby. His voice was low, commanding, and unshakable. "Bring me that girl." The manager's eyes widened in shock. "Sir, the maid." "Yes," Susan said firmly, his eyes never leaving Hannah. "Bring her to me." The entire staff froze. Even the sound of glasses clinking seemed to stop for a second. No one could believe it. The cold billionaire, who never entertained anyone, had just asked for a maid. Hannah's heart dropped into her stomach. Her hands began to tremble around the mop she held. Fear, confusion, and a strange pull of curiosity battled inside her. Why me? Did I do something wrong? She wondered. Is he angry, or is it something else? Her legs felt heavy as the manager walked toward her. Every eye in the lounge was suddenly on her. Every eye in the lounge was suddenly on her. She wanted to disappear, to run away, but she couldn't. When she finally looked up, Susan's gaze was still on her, firm, unblinking, but not cruel. There was something in his eyes that confused her, something she had never seen before. And though her heart raced with fear, another emotion began to stir inside her, something that frightened her even more. It was the feeling that this moment, this look, might change her life forever. Hannah's palms were damp as she clutched the handle of her cleaning cart. She had never been the center of attention before. She was the girl who slipped into rooms silently, scrubbed floors, and left unnoticed. Yet tonight, the billionaire's command had placed every eye on her. The manager whispered, "Come with me. Mr. Carter wishes to see you." His voice was stiff, as if even he couldn't believe the words leaving his mouth. Hannah's knees trembled. Her heart pounded so loudly she thought the entire lounge could hear it. She nodded weakly, leaving her mop behind, and followed the manager down the long hallway that led to the private suites. With every step, she felt smaller. What does he want with me? Did I upset him somehow? The questions burned in her mind. At last, they stopped in front of a tall, polished wooden door. The manager gave her a quick, uncertain look before knocking lightly. A deep voice from inside answered, calm yet powerful. "Enter!" The door opened, and Hannah stepped inside. The suite was breathtaking. Rich velvet curtains framed the city lights. A fireplace glowed faintly, casting shadows across the walls. The scent of expensive leather and aged whiskey filled the air. It was a world far from her own, a world she never imagined stepping into. And there he was. Susan Carter sat on a sleek black leather sofa, one arm stretched casually along the backrest, the other holding a crystal glass. The golden liquid caught the light as he swirled it lazily, but his eyes, those sharp blue eyes, were fixed only on her. For a moment, Hannah forgot how to breathe. She clasped her hands in front of her, trying to look composed. "You wanted to see me, sir?" Her voice was soft, trembling, yet carried an honesty he wasn't used to. Susan leaned back further, studying her carefully. He didn't answer right away. He wanted to watch her shift nervously, to see the innocence in her eyes, the purity that money could never buy. Finally, he spoke. His voice was smooth, deep, but with an edge of curiosity. "Sit." Hannah hesitated. "Sit? Here? With him?" She looked around, unsure if there was another chair meant for her. Susan gestured toward the sofa across from him. "There, don't be afraid." Her heart thumped harder. Slowly, she walked across the thick carpet, every step echoing like thunder in her ears. She lowered herself onto the edge of the sofa, sitting as though ready to spring up and run at any moment. Susan's lips curved, not into a smile, but something close. He set his glass down on the table between them and leaned forward slightly. "You're different," he said quietly, his eyes never leaving her face. Hannah's brows knitted. "Different? I'm just a cleaner." "No," Susan interrupted firmly, shaking his head. "You're not just anything. When you walked past me tonight, I saw something no one else in this hotel carries, something rare." Her cheeks burned. She had no idea how to respond. No man had ever spoken to her like this. Not with such weight, not with such intensity. I don't understand," she whispered. Susan leaned back again, picking up his glass, his gaze still locked on her. "You don't have to understand. Just know. I don't call people into my suite, ever. Yet here you are." The air grew heavy. Hannah could feel her pulse in her fingertips. She had stepped into a place she didn't belong, yet the way he looked at her made her feel as though, for the first time, she truly mattered. She rose nervously, clutching the hem of her uniform. If you don't need me, I should stay." His voice cut through the room like steel, yet softened at the edges. "I don't want you to leave." Her breath caught, and in that instant, Hannah realized this wasn't about orders or duties. This was something far deeper, something dangerous, something she wasn't sure she was ready for, yet something she couldn't resist being pulled into. The night had only just begun, and already her world was changing. The room grew quiet after Susan's command for her to stay. Hannah sat stiffly on the edge of the sofa, her fingers nervously entwined in her lap, while the billionaire leaned back with his glass. The crackle of the fireplace was the only sound between them, but the silence was far from empty. It was heavy, it was alive, it was filled with questions neither dared to speak aloud. Susan's eyes lingered on her face, studying every detail, the way her lashes fluttered when she was nervous, the way her lips pressed together as if holding back unspoken words. He had dined with royalty, negotiated with millionaires, and entertained the most glamorous women in the world, yet none of them had ever held his attention like this one quiet girl in a maid's uniform. At last he broke the silence. "Tell me your name." Hannah swallowed hard. "Hannah, sir. Hannah Miller." He repeated it slowly as if testing how it felt on his lips. Hannah. The way he said it made her shiver. It was as though her name had never truly been spoken until now. His voice lowered. Where are you from? She hesitated, unsure how much to reveal, but something about his gaze made her speak the truth. A small town, far from here. My stepmother sent me to work after things became difficult at home. I've been here ever since, cleaning rooms, serving others. It's not much, but it keeps me alive. Susan's grip tightened around his glass. He was a man who had everything: wealth, power, respect. Yet as he listened to her, he felt something stir inside him. An ache, a guilt. He realized how little he knew of the world outside his glittering empire. Do you ever dream? He asked softly. Hannah's eyes flickered with surprise. No one had ever asked her that, not once. She blinked quickly, her throat tightening. Sometimes, when I'm alone, I dream of freedom, of a little home where no one looks down on me, of love. Her voice cracked on the last word, and she lowered her gaze, ashamed of her vulnerability. Susan's chest tightened. He had never believed in love. To him, it was a distraction, a weakness. But looking at Hannah now, her honesty, her rawness, he felt something he couldn't name, something dangerous. For several moments, neither spoke. The silence returned, but now it carried the weight of their secrets. Hannah stared at the fire, trying to steady her racing heart. Why is he asking me these things? Why does he care? She feared he was playing some cruel game. Yet his eyes told her otherwise. Susan finally leaned forward, placing his drink on the table with a deliberate motion. His voice dropped to a whisper, yet it carried across the room like a command. You're not like them, Hannah, not like the women who come to me for my money. You don't even realize your worth, and that makes you priceless. Her breath caught. She wanted to deny it, to insist she was no one special, but the way he looked at her, as if she were the only person in existence, left her trembling. She stood suddenly, needing to escape the intensity. I should go, sir. I've already stayed too long. Susan rose too, his movement smooth but filled with urgency. He took a step closer, close enough that she could feel the warmth of his presence. No, Hannah. You've stayed just long enough to remind me what it feels like to be alive. Her heart pounded so hard it almost hurt. She didn't know if she should run or fall into his arms. For the first time in years, Susan Carter felt his icy walls begin to melt. And for the first time in her life, Hannah Miller realized that her story was no longer one of invisibility. Something had begun in that silence, something neither of them could stop. The night after their first encounter, Hannah couldn't sleep. She lay awake in her small staff room, replaying every moment, the way his eyes had pierced through her, the softness in his voice when he spoke her name, the strange warmth that lingered even after she left his suite. She told herself it was madness. He was a billionaire, and she was just a cleaner. Their worlds were not only different, they were galaxies apart. Yet when dawn broke, her heart whispered a truth she couldn't ignore. She wanted to see him again. And he wanted her to. That evening, when her shift ended, a staff member approached her with a nervous expression. Mr. Carter asked for you again. Hannah's stomach tightened. Part of her wanted to refuse, to run from the danger of feeling she didn't understand. But another part, an aching, undeniable part, longed to be near him. Her footsteps echoed as she walked down the grand hallway to his suite. With every step, her pulse grew faster, her palms sweatier. She reached the familiar door, lifted her trembling hand, and knocked softly. Come in, his deep voice called from inside. She pushed the door open, and her breath caught. Susan sat exactly where he had been the night before, on the black leather sofa, his sharp suit perfectly in place, a glass of whiskey glowing amber in his hand. But tonight, his eyes carried something different. They weren't just cold and curious. They burned with something unspoken, something dangerous. When his gaze landed on her, the corner of his mouth lifted ever so slightly. You came. Hannah's heart thudded. She stepped inside, closing the door quietly behind her. "You asked for me." "I did," he said, his voice low, steady, like a man who always got what he wanted. He set his glass down and leaned forward, his elbows resting on his knees, his eyes locked onto hers. "I couldn't stop thinking about you." Her breath hitched. A man like him, thinking about me. She tried to find her voice, but it came out fragile. "You shouldn't. I'm not." "Don't say you're not enough," Susan interrupted, his tone sharp but tender. "You've been haunting my thoughts, Hannah. I've had everything in life, and yet nothing felt real. Until you." Her knees felt weak. She lowered herself onto the sofa opposite him, trying to hide the trembling of her hands. The air between them was thick, almost suffocating, yet charged with a pull she couldn't escape. For a moment, neither spoke. The silence was louder than words, filled with the pounding of two hearts refusing to admit what was happening. Finally, Susan reached across the space between them. His fingers brushed hers, just barely, but the touch sent sparks racing through her body. She gasped softly, her chest rising with emotion she didn't know how to contain. Their eyes met again, and in that instant, the world outside his suite ceased to exist. He leaned closer, his voice a whisper. "You don't know what you're doing to me, Hannah. Every time I see you, the walls I've built around myself start to fall." Her lips parted, but no words came out. She could only stare at him, her heart racing, her soul trembling. And then it happened. Susan took her hand fully in his, holding it firmly as if claiming it. His thumb brushed gently over her knuckles, his touch both protective and possessive. Hannah felt her defenses crumbling. She wanted to resist, to remind herself of the gap between them, but his touch burned through every barrier she had. Her voice finally broke free, soft and shaky. "Susan." The way his name rolled off her lips sent fire through him. He drew closer, his face inches from hers, his breath warm against her skin. "You have no idea how much I want you here," he whispered. Her heart threatened to burst. In that moment, Hannah realized this wasn't just a summons. This was destiny pulling them together, two souls from different worlds colliding in a storm of emotions too powerful to deny. Hannah had always believed that love belonged to people with beautiful lives, not to someone like her. She was a cleaner, a girl who wore faded uniforms and carried the scent of cleaning soap on her hands. But now, sitting in Susan's suite, with his fingers entwined in hers, she felt a dangerous truth growing inside her. Love had chosen her, even if it made no sense. Susan Carter was everything she wasn't. Billionaire, powerful, feared, admired. Yet as he gazed at her, none of those titles seemed to matter. His eyes softened in a way no one had ever seen. To him, Hannah wasn't a maid. She was the light in a life that had been dark for far too long. Every night after that, she returned to him. Sometimes she carried a tray with fresh drinks. Sometimes she arrived empty-handed, but always she left with her heart beating faster than when she entered. They would sit on the same sofa, Susan with his drink, Hannah at first across from him, then closer and closer, until the distance between them became unbearable. Their conversations were filled with quiet confessions. She told him about her loneliness, her hidden tears, the way she often wished she were someone else. He listened with a stillness that surprised even himself. For once, Susan Carter wasn't thinking about business deals or money. He was listening with his heart. He, too, revealed pieces of himself, secrets he had never shared, how his wealth built walls around him, how women desired him only for his power, how no one ever dared to see him as a man with scars. Hannah listened, her eyes glistening with understanding. The more they spoke, the deeper they fell into each other's worlds. One night, as the fire glowed warmly beside them, Susan reached out and touched her cheek. His hand was gentle, hesitant, as though afraid she might vanish. "Hannah," he whispered, "I don't know how this happened. You're not supposed to be here with me, but I can't stop wanting you." Her eyes filled with tears. "I'm afraid, Susan. Afraid of what people would say. Afraid I'll wake up and all of this will be gone. He leaned closer, his forehead brushing against hers. His voice was low, trembling with emotion he couldn't hide. Let them talk. Let the world judge. I don't care. All I care about is you. She gasped softly as his lips hovered just above hers. For a heartbeat, time froze. Then he kissed her. It wasn't rough or rushed. It was slow, gentle, filled with years of unspoken loneliness finally finding a home. His lips tasted of warmth and longing, and her heart melted into his. When they pulled apart, Hannah's tears slid down her cheeks. But this time, they weren't tears of sorrow. They were tears of a love she never thought she'd find. "You've changed me," Susan whispered, brushing her tears away with his thumb. "I thought I was unbreakable, untouchable. But one look from you, and my whole world shifted." Her voice shook as she replied, "And you made me feel seen for the first time in my life." That night, as they sat together, hands entwined and hearts exposed, both of them realized something undeniable. This was a love that shouldn't have happened. A billionaire and a hotel maid, a man of power and a woman forgotten by society. Yet here they were, breathing each other in, proving that sometimes the most impossible love stories are the ones destiny writes itself. And though the world outside might never understand, in that suite, with firelight flickering against their faces, they didn't care. Because they had found something rare, something worth risking everything for. Weeks later, Susan held Hannah's hand as they walked out of the hotel together, not as billionaire and maid, but as equals. People stared, whispered, even judged. But Susan didn't care. "Hannah," he said softly, "you showed me that love isn't about money, status, or power. It's about seeing someone's soul." Her eyes filled with tears. "And you showed me that even the coldest heart can warm when it finds the right person." Their love became a quiet reminder to everyone around them. Society must stop judging people by their job, their class, or their past. True worth is found in the heart. And as Susan kissed Hannah under the glow of city lights, their love story whispered a lesson America needs most, that real love sees no status, only souls.